This presentation covers some of the poetry of George Gordon or Lord Byron, including She Walks in Beauty, When We Two Parted, and Darkness. She walks in beauty. She walks in beauty like the night of cloudless climes or climate and starry skies, and all that's best of dark and bright meet in her aspect and her eyes, thus mellowed to that tender light which heaven to gaudy day denies. One shade the more, one ray the less, had half impaired the nameless grace which waves in every raven or black tress hair, or softly lightens o'er her face, where thoughts serenely sweet express how pure, how dear their dwelling place. And on that cheek and o'er that brow, so soft, so calm, yet eloquent, the smiles that win, the tints that glow, but tell me of days in goodness spent, a mind at peace with all below, a heart whose love is innocent. Analysis of She Walks in Beauty. Many sources say this poem is about Mrs. Wilmot, Byron's cousin's wife, whom he describes after seeing at a funeral. Whether this poem is about a specific woman or not, it is clearly one that praises a woman's beauty. The poem is a transitional poem in that it uses characteristics of the Age of Enlightenment with its regular rhyme scheme, in this case iambic tetrameter, or the use of 4 iambic or stressed feet, or stressed syllables per line. But it also uses characteristics of the Romantic period in its emphasis on the emotional. This mixture of elements from different time periods is typical of Byron. Feminists would like the description of the woman in the poem as she is complex, because it not only focuses on her physical beauty, but also praises her spiritual and intellectual beauty through images of night, like a star shining through the darkness of night. Byron uses a series of opposites to emphasize her beauty. For example, he begins with a simile saying, "She walks in beauty like the night of cloudless climes and starry skies," showing her beauty shines like a light in darkness, like the stars in the night. He says her beauty is like the best of dark and bright, as a means to say her beauty is intense like a light shining in the dark. He praises her inner beauty, which waves in every raven tress or softly lightens o'er her face, calling her inner spiritual beauty serenely sweet and pure, and calling the dwelling place of her feelings or her mind dear. The poem focuses on the woman's inner beauty rather than just the physical, by describing her beauty as mostly expressed on her face. Byron writes in the last stanza, "And on that cheek and o'er that brow, so soft, so calm, yet eloquent, the smiles that win, the tints that glow." He goes on to suggest that this beauty is more than simply physical by saying that the aura of beauty emanating from this woman tell of days in goodness spent, a mind at peace with all below, a heart whose love is innocent. The woman's beauty comes from an innocent and good heart, and a life lived doing good. When We Two Parted. When we two parted in silence and tears, half broken-hearted to sever for years, pale grew thy cheek and cold, colder thy kiss. Truly that hour foretold sorrow to this. The dew of the morning sunk chill on my brow. It felt like the warning of what I feel now. Thy vows are all broken, and light is thy fame. I hear thy name spoken, and share in its shame. They name thee before me, a knell ringing a bell to announce something somber, to mine ear. A shudder comes o'er me. Why wert thou so dear? They know not I knew thee, who knew thee too well. Long, long shall I rue, or bitterly regret, thee, too deeply to tell. In secret we met, in silence I grieve, that thy heart could forget, thy spirit deceive. If I should meet thee after long years, how should I greet thee? With silence and tears. Analysis of When We Two Parted. This poem is about an illicit affair between the speaker and a married woman. Some say it is about Byron and the wife of a close friend of his with whom he has had an affair. The poem shows that their love is forbidden when he tells the woman, "Thy vows are all broken," and how when he hears her name spoken he shares in its shame. The couple must remain silent about their affair after they originally parted in silence and tears, half broken-hearted. Since this woman is married to Byron's close friend, the woman's cheeks are described as pale and cold, and her kiss is even colder. But he doesn't know why. Her love may have died for Byron, or she may miss him and be racked by guilt or fear of being found out. But he will never know for sure. Both Byron and the woman are unable to be open and honest due to their forbidden love. The poem has a tone of regret and guilt. The poem suggests that Byron misses the woman and is frustrated at how they cannot be open about their feelings and how he is unsure of how she feels. He shows his guilt and frustration when he says that when he hears her name spoken, a shudder comes over him which makes him feel rue or regret that in secret they met, and that in silence he grieves at the thought that her heart could forget the feelings they once shared. He goes on to regret or fear that if they meet after long years, they will still have to greet each other with silence and tears. Byron was said to have had many affairs and even had illegitimate children by several different women. Even his one true dearest love was with a noblewoman who was married to another man. One account says that Byron had over 200 affairs in just 1 year alone. Analysis of darkness. Since this poem is quite lengthy, I will not read it. However, I would like to discuss the poem a bit. Darkness is more romantic than most of Byron's poems in its intensity of emotion. It is a terrifying apocalyptic poem describing the end of the world and the loss of civilization and humanity. This poem uses blank verse, a literary device defined as unrhyming verse written in iambic pentameter, or 10-syllable lines which alternate between stressed and unstressed syllables, to describe the end of the earth. Byron says in the poem, "The bright sun was extinguished for reasons we do not know, therefore leaving the earth rayless and icy," and goes on to say that morn came and came and brought no day. He says that with the loss of sun, men forgot their passions in the dread of this their desolation, and for a while everything is burned. Cities, forests, and homes, and all creatures are slain for food. He goes on to say no love was left, and as all anyone could think of was death and famine until hunger clung them. He describes sounds of horror such as a piteous and perpetual man, and the sounds of curses and people who gnashed their teeth and howled until all but 2 from an entire city die. These 2 are enemies, and together they met beside the dying embers of an altar place where had been heaped a mass of holy things. They have burned religious relics with their cold skeleton hands, producing just enough of a flame to see each other, which they beheld each other's aspects, saw and shrieked and died, as they saw what each thought was a fiend. Then without people, plants, or life, the world was a void, in which ships sailorless lay rotting on the sea, which no longer had waves. The moon had expired, and winds withered. Clearly, the images Byron paints of the end of life in darkness are horrifying.